Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning once again, and welcome to Justice Awareness at Heartlands. The topic for this morning event is Responsible Finance, Managing Your Spending and Debt. This event is jointly organized by SG Courts and supported by Institute for Financial Literacy, Counselling Singapore, Bono SG, and the Insolvency and Public Trustee's Office. My name is Stanley, and I'm your MC for today. The Justice Awareness at Heartland series aims to share useful and relevant information on specific topics and to increase awareness of court services. Our topic today will cover how you can better manage both your finances and your debt. Bankruptcy orders in Singapore are at 5 years high, and it's very important to develop a healthy financial habit. Well, I work with the Judiciary Call Center, and in my daily work, I attend to inquiries from customers whom I'm not sure what to do when they are served with bankruptcy notice. These customers are also who wants to find out what it means to declare as a bankrupt. I hope you will find this event interesting, useful, and you will benefit from the knowledge shared by the speakers and panelists. To start off this event, it is now my pleasure to invite Registrar Supreme Court, Ms. Jill Tan, to deliver her opening remarks. Ms. Tan, please.
Thank you, Stanley. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this, the second of our Justice Awareness at Heartlands seminars. Through these seminars, we hope to bring you a better understanding of the work that the courts do in areas of life that matter to you. Our first seminar last year was on family violence and harassment matters. Today's topic is somewhat different, but no less serious. It is part of life that we have bills and expenses to pay. These expenses and bills become a problem when they exceed our income. So, what can we do to avoid overspending? What can we do to avoid falling into debt? If we are in debt, can we then get help to negotiate repayments with our creditors? If our creditors wish to bankrupt us, is there no way out? And once we have been made bankrupt, what happens then? And how do we get out of bankruptcy? To help us answer these questions this morning, we have brought together speakers and panelists from a wide range of sources. Mr. Po Yu King, a trainer from the Institute for Financial Literacy. Ms. Tan Hui Min, General Manager of Credit Counselling Singapore. Mr. Trustee Xavier, a pro Bono SG volunteer and a licensed insolvency practitioner. Mr. Kevin Teo, Deputy Official Assignee from the Insolvency and Public Trustee's Office, and Ms. Karen Tan, Assistant Registrar of the Supreme Court of Singapore. Having personally worked with 4 out of 5 of these speakers and panelists before today, I can say for a fact that they have much knowledge and many years of experience between them. I am therefore confident that by the end of today's session, you will have a better understanding of what it takes to manage your spending and debts. Or if you are already in debt, then what your options are to manage the situation that you are in, and if you are made bankrupt, then what to expect and how to work towards getting out of bankruptcy. So without further ado, let's get started with learning about responsible finance, managing our spending and debts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. This morning, we are very privileged to have with us 3 distinguished speakers who will be sharing their knowledge and insights with us. There will be a Q&A session after their presentation. You may wish to scan this QR code to send your questions. This QR code will be flashed again before the start of the Q&A session. Our first speaker is Mr. Po Yu King. Yu King has worked in both government and private sector for more than 20 years. is someone who has benefited from good financial habits and is passionate about bringing financial literacy to more Singaporeans, especially those in middle to low income group. In his presentation, Yu King will share basic personal planning of finances and expenses and how to avoid retail traps. Yu King, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Student and SG Courts partners for having us. My name is Yu King and I'm from the Institute for Financial Literacy, Money Sense. Just now we were just joking among the speakers that the order they have placed us is, if you do this first part well, hopefully you don't have to see the next few people. So it's a supply chain that we are bringing to you today. At the Institute for Financial Literacy, we provide free and unbiased financial education to the public. And just a quick disclaimer, everything we're going to talk about in my segment is just purely for financial education, and it's not any advice to purchase any particular services or products. I'm just going to cover three key points in managing your spending and debts, and then later we can take more questions during the Q&A as well. So the first point is on cash flow management, and really that's the starting point of good financial planning. So cover 3 points on cash flow management. Number one is to set a budget and track your expenditure. You know, when you want to improve on anything, having a measurement is one of the best ways to try and improve, because if you don't measure, it's hard to improve. So if you're trying to lose weight, it will be very strange if you don't measure your weight, because then how would you know whether you are improving? So setting a budget and tracking your expenditure is something we encourage all Singaporeans to do, regardless of your income levels. And what that means is writing down your average monthly income. Some freelancers and gig work and freelance work is more and more common today. I'm also a freelancer myself, so tracking the sources of income and roughly knowing what is my average monthly income. And then deciding how much to save each month is an important decision. I'll talk more about this in the next slide. And then after that, to be able to set up a budget amongst the various expense categories. So how much would you set aside for groceries, for transport, for entertainment, for luxuries? It's also important to give ourselves some enjoyment, but having a budget for the different expense categories is very, very useful. And then from there, we track our expenditure and review it against what we have allocated as the budget. So personal story, about 2 years ago, I don't currently own a car, but about 2 years ago, I suspected that I was probably taking a little bit too much Grab, taxi, all the paid ride-hailing rides. So the good thing is now you can especially all these ride-hailing apps are all online. So I went back retrospectively, October 2023. So in 1st November, I went back October 2023. I opened up all my ride-hailing apps to check how much did I spend on ride-hailing for the month. And I shocked myself. I spent $700 that month on ride-hailing alone. I thought a high month would be maybe about 400, but it was 700. And so you know, just tracking and knowing your numbers is something that's super, super helpful. And ever since then, I've been more conscious about taking ride-hailing rides, especially when it's not necessary. Lastly, then we find ways to control our spending. And I'm going to go a little bit more into this in the part 2, but let me show you a short video on 3 ways to try to control your spending.
Let's be real, spending money is way too easy, especially with Apple Pay and buy now pay later everywhere. But if you want to level up your finances, here are 3 easy ways to control your spending. Set a 48-hour rule. Impulse purchases. Before buying something, wait 48 hours. And if you still want it after 2 days, then it might actually be worth it. Track every purchase. You ever check your bank account and wonder where your money went? Same. Start tracking every expense, even the little ones. And trust me, you'll spend less just by knowing where your money is going. Unsubscribe and unfollow. Companies want you to spend. So unsubscribe from promo emails and unfollow brands that can be out of sight, out of mind. Equals more money in your pocket. Small changes equals big savings. So which tip are you going to try first?
Yeah, you know, in today's world, especially with digital, there's so many ways for money to leave our pockets. So actually, one good thing or one good tip is find less ways for money to escape from your wallet. Don't have too many credit cards, don't have too many exit strategies for your money, so then you'll stay in your pocket. The second area that I think is good cash flow management is to save before spending and to automate your savings. And what that means is, the general recommendation is to try to aim to save at least 20% of your income before spending. Now, we recognize that for certain lower income individuals that may be harder, but maybe then start with trying to save 5% of your income, 10% of your income. Small steps go a long way. And then the second part of this is to automate your savings. And what that means is nowadays it's very easy to set up a second bank account. So you could have one bank account for income and expenditure, and then you can set up a second bank account for savings and maybe money that you might put towards investing, and set up an automatic standing instruction to save every month. I did that actually when I first started working more than 20 years ago, and up to today I still have these two bank accounts. One is for income and expenditure, and one is for savings, and for many years my savings was just automated, and that has really helped me build up a saving base. So something to think about, and the more you automate your cash flow management and your financial planning, then the less time you spend worrying about it. And the other advantage of this is once you transfer your savings out to the savings kind of account, then roughly you kind of know that whatever's left in this first account is kind of your budget limit that you can spend for the month. So that's a super useful way. And the third area is really to set aside 3 to 6 months expenses as an emergency fund. And that we say in financial planning, there are 3 main risk management strategies. Number 1 is set up an emergency fund. Number 2 is get out of debt as quickly as possible, which we're going to talk about. And then number 3 is have adequate insurance for protection purposes. So setting up an emergency fund is cash readily available on short notice. It's a buffer in times of emergency, and really having this emergency fund means it reduces stress and there's greater peace of mind when an emergency actually happens, and also then you'll be less likely to be tempted to use debt or quick credit to solve these emergency problems. So just to wrap up this segment, cash flow management. Number 1 is to set up a budget and track your expenditure. Number 2 is to aim to save at least 20% of your income and automate your savings. And number 3 is to set aside 3 to 6 months expenses as an emergency fund. The second segment we talk about then is to convert expenses to savings. And here really the main point I want to touch on is to be able to understand the power of small adjustments. My wife and I hang out with some young adults quite regularly, and quite often we see them when we meet them, they have a cup of Starbucks type coffee or some bubble tea in their hands. And so I asked them, how often do you drink one of these drinks, which nowadays is costing at least $6 to $8. And for a lot of them, it's normal, at least 5 to 6 cups per week. And so if you're consuming such a seemingly a little bit more expensive type of drink 5 to 6 times a week, that could mount up to $1,500 a year. But on the other hand, if we substitute for the kopitiam type coffee and all that, and it is $150 per cup, that could amount to about $390 or $400 a year. Now, I'm not saying go all or none on one or the other side, but just to demonstrate the power, with that difference of about $1,170 per year of savings, in 3 years it's going to be $3,500. And that's going to be your nice holiday if you want to go for one, or if you need to buy a new laptop for your work purposes, And so really, a lot of people think, oh, but I don't have big amounts to save. But the more important point to remember is that small sums add up. If you're going to build a house, you start brick by brick. So if you're going to build our financial house, we start with small amounts. So some ideas of how to save more. There are many ideas. One interesting thing you can do with your friends is ask them for their money saving hacks and learn from your friends. But maybe just a couple of ideas for today. Firstly is really to differentiate the difference between basic needs and wants or luxuries. We read in the newspapers sometimes people say, oh, I need to go to a gym, it's that I need the exercise and the gym subscription or the is necessary. And I think coming from a sports and exercise background myself, if we look at that statement carefully, the need for exercise is a basic need. But going to a gym is the luxury version to meet that basic need, because there are free ways to exercise. So a lot of people now start to muddle up the basic need with what is a want or a luxury. So to differentiate, that's important. Most of the major supermarket chains now have house brand items, and some of them are really more affordable. So exit from as many regular subscriptions as possible. And then review your mobile and internet plans. Over the past 3-4 years, the mobile and internet plans have really dropped by a lot. And even for myself, my home my home broadband plan and my mobile plan in the last 2 years, I renewed it to a lower level. So set small goals and motivate yourself. The last thing I'm going to talk about is just a basic understanding of power of compounding and the different types of debt. A quick understanding for some who might not realize that there's a difference between simple interest versus compound interest. In simple interest, assuming if we have a principal amount of $100 invested and in earning 5% interest, in simple interest, that $100 earning 5% will earn us $5 of interest, and this will be the same amount every year. So every year, we will earn $5 of interest. That's called simple interest. In compound interest, it works slightly differently. If you invest a principal of $100, in the first year, you will earn 5% or $5 interest. But in the second year, your 5% interest will be based on the principal plus the previous year's interest. So $105, you'll get $5.25 in interest. And then same thing in the third year, it's 5% of the previous amounts. So a larger interest of $5.51, and then same thing in the fourth year. So compound interest is compounding and it's building, and the curve gets steeper and steeper. The amount of payouts or amount of interest you get every year. Some call it earning interest or interest. So after understanding this, an interesting question I would like to ask you is, compound interest your friend or your foe? Is it a friend or an enemy? And the answer is really, it depends. It's your friend if you're earning interest, and it's your foe if you're paying interest. And so, in debt management or savings, there's a very simple concept. If you are paying interest, you are getting poorer. If you are earning interest, you are getting richer. So you always want to be on the earning interest side, not on the paying interest side. And so to help us understand this, there's a rule of 72 that's a quick and dirty way. You don't need complex maths kind of formulas to estimate the number of years it takes for any amount to double based on compound interest. So if you take the number 72 divided by the compound interest rate, that will equal the number of years it takes for that amount of money to double. And so to give you an example, if you save $5,000, and if you're earning 4% compound interest, so for example, CPF special account gives a base interest rate of 4%, that $5,000 alone will become $10,000 in 18 years' time, purely because of the interest. So it will become $10,000 in 18 years' time. However, if you have a debt of $5,000 and you are charged 30% interest, in 2.4 years' time, that $5,000 debt will become $10,000. It's extremely quick. And in our talks and workshops, whenever we ask, especially young adults, about what's the interest rate on credit cards, usually only 1 or 2 people know the interest rate on credit cards. And most young adults have a credit card. So the power of compounding is because small amounts, you start early and then you let compound interest do the work. So I give you a long-term example to finish up for today. Is if you save $100 per month, right? And then you are able to invest it at 4% compound interest. After 40 years, the raw amount you would have saved is $48,000. But because of compound interest, you have a 2.5 times that amount, which is pretty powerful. And so a lot of Singaporeans has learned this, that, CPF is such a powerful tool, and then the news recently came out that the record amount of people doing voluntary cash top-ups into CPF. So something to think about. And really, one of the last things I want to talk about here today is beware of debt traps. debt traps. So there's credit card debt, which the next speaker from Credit Counselling Singapore will talk a lot more about. So there's a healthy way to use credit cards and an unhealthy way. But similarly, there are healthy ways and unhealthy ways to use installment plans and buy now, pay later, which is getting very, very, very popular. For some young adults that we surveyed, some young adult audiences, 60 to 70% of them use some BNPL thing. And even for small purchases like $10 purchase, $100 purchase. Installment plans and BNPL, some people might have a misconception, they are still a form of debt. Anytime you have an IOU contract, even if it's a digital contract on a mobile phone, it's a form of debt. You owe somebody something. That means, you need to be able to pay back because it's a legal obligation to repay. And it may affect your credit score if you don't repay especially. But more importantly, you are spending future money today. You are constraining future cash flow when you use installment plans and buy now, pay later. And research has shown that really having these tools available, it does encourage overspending because it gives a false sense of affordability. So how do we avoid and reduce debt? Number one is to avoid making purchases on installments. Number two is to pay bills on time through gyro. So some of the bills, if you can gyro it, and even for credit card bills, you can set an automatic deduction from your bank account. And if you are in debt, pay off the high interest loans first, but I think we'll discuss this later during the panel. And always avoid credit card rollover debt to the following month, and CCS will explain more. And a better habit, we think, is to save first and buy later, rather than buy now and pay later. So if you need to buy a $600 item rather than BNPL and then repay $100 for the next 6 months, it's better to save $100 a month first and then buy the item 6 months later. So delay of gratification sometimes has got benefits. And then use cash or debit cards if you're afraid of overspending. And lastly, always have sufficient emergency funds. So let me wrap up my last slide for this morning. To develop healthy financial habits, here are a few healthy financial habits. Number one, set a budget and track your spending. Number two, to aim to save at least 20% of your income before spending. And number three, to set aside 3 to 6 months expenses as an emergency fund, because that's your first buffer or cushion in times of emergency. And number four, to understand and use compound interest to grow your money rather than let it hurt you in debt. And lastly, to minimize the use of debt and to get out of debt as quickly as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yuka. I guess there's no more bubble tea and Starbucks for me. Our second speaker is Ms. Tan Kui Min. Kui Min is the General Manager of Credit Counselling Singapore. In addition to assisting debt-distressed borrowers, she believes in equipping individuals with financial knowledge and skills to become more financially capable. Kui Min will speak about the prudent use of credit cards, the impacts of debt, and support avenues available to debtors. Kui Min, please.
So let's see what I can do here to make it a little bit different. Okay, all right. Okay, how many of you have heard of Credit Counselling Singapore? Looks like 30% of you, okay. All right. Now, we were set up more than 10 years ago, all right, with two objectives. To prevent and to resolve, I would say. Okay, so to prevent people from getting into trouble, we of course promote responsible use of credit, right? Pretty much every one of us uses credit, okay? But it's just how to use it responsibly and not get ourselves into trouble. But we have the remainder part, okay? What if I really gotten into trouble? Then the thing is that go to CCS. Hopefully you can find some solution there. Okay? So we want to restore people's financial well-being by giving information, education, things like that. But we also help people to resolve their debt problem through credit counseling, and for suitable individuals, we will help them to work out a repayment arrangement to their creditors. And hopefully the creditors will agree with their proposal and allow the person to pay according to what he said he's going to pay. Okay? Now, so credit cards. Instead of, is it a friend or foe to use it, or is it a tool or a trap? Okay, and then we'll talk about use credit card responsibly, and then the red flags, to look out for, and then if you need help, where to go to, of course, CCS, right? Yes. Now, enjoy perks, right? Everyone wants to use credit card. Why? I mean, it's convenient. I don't have to bring so much cash. I just tap, so convenient, don't have to wait there to exchange, I give you $100 and I get back another $35.50. All right, and then secure payments, build credit history. Yes, important to have credit history, but hopefully it's good history, meaning, how many people know about there's this thing called credit report? Okay, not everyone. Yeah, there is this organization called Credit Bureau Singapore, CBS. They keep record of our payment behavior. They are the depository place, okay, but it's the bank that provide them the information. So if I pay, the bank will upload that I paid. But if I did not pay, the bank will also upload that I did not pay. Or how much I paid, did I pay late? Okay? And this credit history is important because when I want to take up a housing loan, okay, and I want to take out the housing loan with the bank will check my credit report. And if I have a good payment history, chances are I will likely to get the loan. Chances are, okay? But if my payment record is not very good, even I go to the bank to apply for a renovation loan, okay, they will check my credit bureau report and they say, hey, I'm not a good paymaster, some months I didn't pay, some months I pay late, then my credit history score will be very low, and they may not want to give me the renovation loan. Now, and then the use of emergency and urgent purchases. Yeah, I may not have $3,000 in my bank account, but in the event that I need to come up with a sum of money, of course, credit card can help me out. Okay, but okay. Credit card hidden traps. Buy first, pay later. Okay, the thing is that because credit card got a line of credit, even though, like I say, I don't have $3,000 in my bank account, but if I see this beautiful bag costing me $4,999, I can use the credit card to buy it, right? Because I'm borrowing to buy, even though I don't have the money in the bank, okay? So it gives us the sense that I can afford to buy. And when the bills come, assuming about $5,000 I charge to my credit card, when the bills come, they normally ask us to pay about 3%. So 5,000 at 3% is $150 affordable, right? Then I thought I'm doing okay. But am I owing $150 or am I owing $5,000? It's $5,000 I'm owing. But they asked me to pay $150 first. And when I pay $150, $100 is actually going to pay the interest. $50 will go to pay my principal. Because I didn't pay in full, right? I need to pay for the interest portion. The 3%, 2% is actually interest payment. So my $5,000 is minus away $50 only. Even though I pay $150, but I'm only paying $50, so my outstanding is $4,950. But you see how it works. It's not that 5,000 minus away $150. Now, the other thing is making minimum payments. Yeah, because the minimum payment is always affordable. Even if I have $10,000 outstanding on my credit card, and assuming not assuming, the 3% will be $300. Okay, so by paying the minimum, and I continue to use my credit card, it will come to a point that my minimum payment will exceed $300 per month. Okay, if I chalk up to 50,000, it will be $1,500 per month minimum payment. Okay, is it still affordable to me? Maybe not. Okay, so we have to be very careful about using credit. One thing, credit card money is not my income. It's not my savings. It's borrowed money. If I use it and I don't pay in full at the end of the month, I will incur interest charge. Okay, so remember, just because I got 5 credit cards, each one with 10,000 credit facility, doesn't mean that I got $50,000 savings. All right, these are credit. It's the bank's money. And if I don't pay on time, expect to pay interest plus late fee. All right, don't blame the bank. It's the way I manage money, right? I will use the credit. That's why I have an outstanding. And it's because I did not make full payment, that's why there is an interest charge. And it's because I did not pay on time, that's why there's a late fee. So it's not the credit card fault. It's the way I manage money that is incorrect. That's why I accumulated all this interest and late fee. So we have to do something about ourselves, all right? How to manage it wisely so that I can enjoy all the perks but not get myself into trouble. Okay, there was a lady we counseled many years ago. She loved branded bags. And because of credit card, she can buy the branded bags quite easily. She bought 30, I think more than 30 branded bags and got herself into trouble. Okay, so you can enjoy, but don't enjoy to the extent that you're going to be stressed out by the debt that you find difficult to achieve. Now, chasing rewards and cashback, yeah, because one thing I realized that in order to have the cashback, I need to at least spend $800 on one of my credit cards. Okay, maybe it's not too difficult. Nowadays, everything you can just use credit card to pay. Even for my lunch, I go to the food court, I can tap, PayWave. So quite easy to accumulate $800. But if I have a few cards, then how? Every card I have to spend at least $800, right? And then they say, then I'm going to spend a lot of money because I want the cash back. So forget about that, all right? I mean, I want a cash back, but maybe one card is sufficient, I don't always have to spend $1,600 to get cash back for all my credit cards. But still, if some of us carry 4 or 5 or 6 credit cards, because you want the perks, okay, so you spend more. All right, so to control, maximum 2 cards, okay? Just in case your visa doesn't work, hopefully must work. Okay, using credit cards responsibly. Yes, use a budget to manage your cash flow, yes. Usually talk about all this, okay? Now, I requested to have this PowerPoint quick, so I can show you, step by step. The blue one is the income, all right? So when we have our income, we should set aside savings or what we call investment, okay? And then a big portion actually go to expenses, right? So income minus savings and expenses, all right? Now savings, why set up savings? Even for things like spend irregularly. Maybe you only pay, okay, for those of you who drive, you may pay your road tax 6 monthly or 1 year, once a year, right? Then of course, even if you don't drive, but there are items that maybe you pay once a year, like your property tax, and then of course festive season, like buying things for Chinese New Year, your Hari Raya, things like that. It's occasional spending, so put it aside, okay? And then set aside for emergencies, okay? The number I think now stick in your mind is how many months? 3 to 6, okay? You got more, you set aside more, you not hopefully slowly build up to 3 months. And then set aside for investment and large purchases, right? What is large purchases? It could be buying a computer every 3 years, because it will hook up. Nowadays a computer doesn't last long, right? So, or maybe your renovation, or maybe your aircon is not blowing right now, you need to buy a new aircon, So these are the savings portion. Then there is the daily routines, right? Money, town council maintenance, your utilities, your TV, whatever, okay, gifts and donations. Then hopefully, income savings minus expenses, the expenses part, there is still the loan installment payment and payments for installment payment, IPP. That means I charge to my credit card and then I ask my credit card to split the bill for me. And the good thing is that it may get affordable and there's no interest charge if I pay on time. But when I have a lot of IPP for that $200 a month, IPP for another $100 per month, another IPP $500 a month, hey, it adds up to 800. The question is, my budget can accommodate or not? Okay, so before you take up another installment payment loan, please stop taking. What is your income? What is your expenses? Okay, what are all the financial commitments you already made? Do you have capacity to sign up another $300 installment payment? You may realize that you actually don't have. So don't sign up. Even though it's installment payment, even it may be something that I think I need. A lot of times you say, I need, I don't know. Okay, I want. It's okay to want, nothing wrong with it. So the thing is that some tips are okay. So what here we say is that, okay, pay your credit card in full. Yes, as long as I don't pay in full, I must be prepared to pay the interest. And it's minimally 2% per month. Because credit card interest rate is actually now more like 26 to 28% a year. So you divide by 12 is 2% or more. Okay? And then use a budget to manage your spending, so that you know how much of your money goes where, right? You want to be the master of your money, right? So you tell the money where to go, okay? Otherwise you go to pay interest, I don't think you want that. Then limit the number of credit cards you hold. Like I said, the more cards you have, the more likely you're going to spend on it because you want to get the perks. Because if I use this card, I can get this discount. I use that card, I can get cash rebates, okay? And then end up, I will spend a lot more, okay? But of everything here said, you just remember one thing, okay? Using credit card, I am borrowing, okay? I am borrowing, so I am owing, okay? Until I pay off, okay? Yes, this is the one, okay? We want to take up another loan, fine, but ask yourself this power, okay? What is the purpose? Now, like I say, it's not that you cannot buy something you want. You can, go ahead. But it must be a conscious decision. You done your sums, you find out, you really can afford to service the loan. Then you can just go and sign up, okay? Affordability. Can I service a $400 monthly installment? Maybe not. Then choose a more simple model, right? For example, if you need a fridge, do you really need a fridge that costs you $4,000? Or can you just buy a fridge that costs you $1,500? Okay? Then get something more affordable, save your money, and then the thing is the options. Assuming I really don't have enough money to buy, then what else can I do? You can just mention save first, buy later. This is one way. Another is like I said, buy a more simple model, right? I mean, a fridge is a fridge, okay? I know I like to have ice cube press come out, ice water press come out, and don't know what else, beautiful design or whatever. But really, if a $1,500 fridge serves the purpose, $1,500 fridge, no need to go for the $4,000 fridge. Okay, even you say, oh, the $4,000 fridge can last 10 years. The $1,500 don't know how many years, 5 years? Okay, like $1,500 times 2, 3,000 is still cheaper than the $4,000 fridge. Just take a different perspective. Alright? Got money, go buy. But money a bit tight, then we have to exercise a little bit of prudence. Okay, impact of that, okay. Increased stress, right? I think that is natural, when I see my credit card bill keep going up, it's stressful, or you don't even want to see because it's too stressful. This, you're feeling like hopelessness and isolation. Yes, sometimes when your friend hiding from you, you ask him to come out, he doesn't want to go out with you. Why? Maybe he has got some problem, maybe financial. I'm not saying all, some of them may be because of that. Money not enough, go out, spend money, so he just doesn't want to meet up with us anymore. Causes relation conflicts and tension, yes. We have counseled cases, the husband and wife quarrel in front of my colleagues. Blaming one another, you talk up that, you this, you that. It's very stressful, and your stress will pass on to your kids, okay? And it will impact your work. And if you cannot concentrate at work, you cannot perform well, you don't get your bonuses, but still, right, you're counting the bonus to help pay down your debt. You can't do that anymore. But still, depending on who you borrow from, okay, I mean, I have stories that debt collectors go to the company, and then of course, you know, it may jeopardize one's employment. Impairs decision making, yeah, because we are so stressed, we cannot think properly. Right? Be it due to that problem or due to whatever problem, right? When there's a problem, we can't think properly. And that is money, and money is something we can manage. Okay, so manage it well, reduce the potential problem of being stressed by it. Okay, hinders long-term planning abilities. Yeah, so cannot think far. Okay, but we need money forever, right? As soon as I'm alive, even I'm dead, I still need money. Why? My funeral expenses are right. I mean, hopefully I got some savings that my family can use the money to pay for my final expenses. And nowadays it's not cheap, right? What? Depending, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000? Don't count on the begin, it may not cover. You understand what I'm saying, right? I mean, it's just that I don't want to leave the problem to my family members, then I take care of myself, making sure I have my final expenses ready to take care of my final expenses. Okay, red flags. I requested the organizer to give me a slide that I can point and let you see. As you see, the color changes, right? Okay, this one is, you keep apply, okay, you go and apply another new account again. Why? Is it because your current credit cards are already maxed out? So I go and apply for another card so that I got more money to spend on. If I'm saying right, I got 4 credit cards, but because all maxed out, money not enough for me to use. So I go and apply for another credit card. And this is how people chalk up debt. They borrow to pay for their living expenses. They borrow to pay their debts. And that is how debt worse and worse now. Okay? The other one is making only minimum payment. Yes, if I can only afford to make minimum payment, that means I'm in trouble. If I cannot pay more than the minimum, I am in trouble. Okay? Then the thing is increased outstanding balance. So look at your bank statement over the last 3 to 6 months. Is it going up? The outstanding, the credit card, I'm saying, if it's going up, it means that I'm talking up more debts. I find it more difficult to pay, right? So go back, check your bank statement. Is it going up? For credit cards, okay, if you're saying it's going up, good for you. But if your credit card is going up, the outstanding, not good. Pay less than minimum payment. Wow, now, and I said, 10,000 minimum payment is for 300, 50,000 is 1,500, right? 1,500, right? If I cannot pay 1,500, I only pay $1,000 because that's the best I can do. Definitely, I'm in trouble, right? And I have to take cash advance to pay another credit card. Definitely, I am in trouble. Okay, so this is the worst. I think, you know, start receiving calls from the bank collectors asking me when I'm going to make payment. Definitely, I am in trouble. So when I'm in trouble, what to do? Okay, this one, Chris will talk about it later on. You know, legal action. Okay. In trouble means seek help, right? Please go and seek help. Nothing so-called I say about it. To me, I tell my help seeker, you are brave because you face the problem, you acknowledge it, and you take steps to address it. You are brave. Hiding from it is not brave. Facing it is bravery. Okay. So seek help. All right. For CCS side, we got a 3-step help process. We provide information. We conduct information talk every week, mainly in English, but once in a while we have a Mandarin session. We conduct it on a weekday evening or a Saturday afternoon. I think later on we have a talk, right? Yeah, my colleagues will think of it. So it's online. Okay, we have in-person, we have online. So don't tell me cannot. Okay, got Saturday, got weeknight, got online, got in-person. Pick and choose. Okay. The talk is about 1.5 hours. We talk about the do's and the don'ts. What not to do, not to get into legal trouble, right? What to do so that you can solve the problem faster. We talk about options. What are the different options? There are at least 6 options. okay, and come to CCS to work out a debt management program, basically a money installment plan. It's just one of the 6 options. Not everybody is suitable, but if the person is suitable, then if the person wants to, we can help him or her to put it up to the creditors for review, and hopefully the creditors agree. If the creditors agree, that means I cannot pay according to what I have proposed to pay. And if I pay like that, beautifully, in full, on time, every month, the creditors will not come and kacau me. Okay? Because I'm paying what? Right? And I can see myself become debt free in a few years' time. Alright? So, 3-step, attend talk, and then of course submit a counseling request, Yes, we need you to provide information to us. Without information, how am I going to calculate and to help the debtor to work out a payment plan? So, need to submit the counseling request package, like it's a form plus income statements, CPF statements, CPS report minimally. Okay, and then we will arrange for either one-to-one or group session. Not to worry, group session is also private and confidential. You don't have to talk. Say out your numbers openly, but you'll be guided to fill out a form to look at your own numbers and to identify potential solution. Okay? Yeah, today, 2 o'clock. So after this, anyone want to learn, you don't have to be in debt to attend, anyone can attend. But if you have a loved one that you think could be having problem, ask the person to attend and to register online. Okay? Now, just to share some happy story. I remember one of the debtor I counseled many years ago. When he was, really many years ago, almost 20 years ago. Now, almost 20 years ago, when a person earns $6,000, that's a lot of money, right? He was earning that kind of money, but he was in debt. He was a manager level person, earning good income, but in debt. But he just so focused. He took up taxi driving also during his free time. And on top of that, he also go and study his master's degree, in some maritime law or don't know what. Fantastic. He cleared his debt, he got his master. Isn't it wonderful? I mean, because we help him to work out a payment plan. So he can now concentrate on making payment every month according to what he has proposed. He proposed we only assist, we are facilitator. Okay? So he has to be the one to come up to say how much he can pay. Of course, we help him work out a budget, work out a payment plan. But he cleared his debt. And another one that my colleague shared with me. This gentleman gambled into debt. Frankly speaking, when it comes to gambling cases, very tough. Because gambling is an addiction. And there's no such thing, I stopped gambling one. No. It's a journey. Okay? Even with gambling counseling, it's a journey. Okay? So he is a gambler. And it's really unfavorable. That means chances are his plan is likely to fail one. I would say, okay, generally speaking, because if they have no control, they don't go for counseling, they got no good support from the family, high chance that they can't make it to clear everything. And within the first year, when he put up his repayment plan, already defaulted more than one time. That's why my colleague remember him. It's really a very big case. But I don't know what my colleague did. Okay? Maybe they got rapport, maybe he bothered to call my colleague to ask for help, and my colleague paid attention to him, listened to him, encouraged him, and asked him to focus, focus on the job. Because if he were to lose this job, he's unlikely to get another one because it's a very niche job, profession. Plus, he has an old mother. So somehow, he managed to make it up. It's very encouraging because I say people who have a gambling addiction, if they don't seek proper help, it's not easy for them to complete their payment. And for cases that defaulted even in the beginning of the first few months, again, chances are they can't complete their payment. So he has got 2 things against him, but he still make it. So, Chinese say lah, 有心就可以了. You got the heart, you can do it. Alright, so in conclusion, know what you want, okay, and you really need to make an effort. It takes time. To clear a debt takes time. On average, our client takes 6 to 7 years to prepare. So need to stay very focused. Okay? Of course, most of the idea is don't get into debt. That means don't have so many credit cards. Okay? Can enjoy, but don't over-enjoy. Okay? Alright? And then when you have problems, face it, deal with it. Alright? And then when you deal with it, stay focused, stay disciplined, and it should work out. Thank you.
Thank you, Humit. Our third and final speaker is Mr. Trustee Xavier. Trustee is a volunteer with Bono SG and he is an associate director with MinLaw LLC. As a licensed insolvency practitioner, he acts as a private trustee in bankruptcy and represents both debtors and creditors. Trustee will present facts about bankruptcy, its effect, and post-discharge milestones. He will also briefly share about debt repayment schemes. Trustee, please.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for everyone for attending today. I think as what Hui Min said just now, I want to echo that if you've taken the first step towards understanding your own issue, understanding your own problem, I think that's a step in the right direction. It is brave indeed to try and find solutions. So if any of you right here in the audience are facing similar problems, just know that we are here to assist, we're here to give you some guidance and hopefully give you some steps towards the way out. That said, I have to say that whatever shared today is not legal advice. Please find your own lawyer. Might be me, might not be me. But in any case, we are here just to give you some guiding steps. Now, today I want to just talk about the legal perspective on debts because I think there's a lot of misconceptions, misunderstanding, and TikTok, unfortunately, has introduced a lot of misconceptions into what bankruptcy is all about and what debts mean for you, right? So the first thing that I want to share today is about debt. What exactly is debt from a legal perspective? As I think Yu King was sharing just now, if you owe money to anyone, now he mentioned in the context of having a contract with someone, but the truth is if you owe money to someone and you owe that person an obligation to return it, that's actually a debt. I don't know how many of you remember this NCPG ad where the father was borrowing money from the daughter for one last bet, right? I mean, yes, the daughter is too young to enter legal relations, but that's actually technically a debt because he owes money to her. And he has made an oral promise captured on TV to repay that money to her, right? Or the one about the World Cup 2014 where the boys' life savings were taken to bet on Germany and somehow Germany won that year. In any case, these are all debts. So a lot of us think about debts in terms of credit cards, mortgage, hire purchase. But if you borrow from licensed money lenders, or in fact, even if you borrow from unlicensed money lenders, that's technically a debt because you have created an obligation to repay it to them. If you are a remiser, you do contra or margin trading, that's also a debt. If you borrow from friends or family, that is also a debt. And they can take action against you to recover that debt, right? There is also a bit of confusion as to what is a letter from the courts versus what is a letter from a lawyer. A lot of inquiries we get is that the court wrote to me to tell me I owe money, which is, to us as lawyers, a little bit of a strange description. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to clarify. Now, if you get a letter from a law firm, so that's our logo right at the top over here. If you get a letter from a law firm, that is not a statutory demand, right? I'll show you later what a statutory demand is, and even more importantly, it is not a request from the courts, right? It is usually a letter of demand that is not always about money. Sometimes people want you to stop doing certain things. It is not an official court document. An official court document is signed by Mr. Tan and has a seal on the first page, which will have the crest of Singapore. that is a court document. A letter of demand is not a court document. It is a precursor to things that may happen in the future if you don't comply. So please read through the letter, figure out what it's asking you to do or not do, and then after that, maybe seek legal advice or take steps to comply. Now on the flip side, if you are pursuing a debt from a person, now a letter of demand is a helpful tool, but in a case of a debtor who doesn't want to pay, it's rarely going to be a be-all and end-all. Certain people who owe money will be spooked by the letter, but not everyone will comply. And the letter itself doesn't create compliance. The letter itself indicates that compliance may be required if not further steps are taken, but in and of itself, it's just pretty much a warning, right? Now, if you receive this form, however, with the Insolvency Restructuring and Dissolution Act 2018 and a form number on top, this is a statutory demand. Now, a statutory demand is a form prescribed by law that gives a debtor notice that a certain sum is due and owing. The most important thing to note is that if you receive this, if you don't make any attempts to communicate or repay the debts within 21 days, the creditor, the person you owe money to, can start taking up bankruptcy proceedings. So if you receive this on, let's say, the 1st of February, if you don't reply by the 22nd of February and you don't make attempts to reach out, then as of 22nd February, the person you owe money to can go to court, ask for a bankruptcy order to be made, because there is an assumption that you cannot pay the money that is due. Right? So this is a very important form. It is also important to note, I'm just reminded that please make sure your address is updated, because the excuse that I didn't receive it because I moved house is not a sufficient excuse. The creditor, the person you owe money to, has that address, and if that's the only address that they have, then that is sufficient for them to create bankruptcy proceedings against you, right? And I move house, I don't check my mailbox, is not sufficient. In certain cases, some law firms actually have people go to your house, knock on the door, and serve the notice. Again, pretending you're not home is not enough. Telling your wife to go to the door and say, I'm not around, is not enough, right? It is the last known address, and by law, serving at the last known address is sufficient to create the certain presumptions that give rise to bankruptcy proceedings, right? So I just wanted to get those out of the way. So I just want one more point. It's not easy to set aside a statutory demand. Now, people go online and see that you can set aside a statutory demand. It's complicated because you need to show certain very specific things under the law. And it's not just, again, I wasn't there, I didn't receive it. That is not enough grounds to set aside. You have to show other things, which again, your lawyer can advise you on. So, bankruptcy. What exactly is bankruptcy? I think one of the major misconceptions I do want to get out of the way is that bankruptcy is not a life sentence. You may have heard horror stories. I want to assure you that since 2015, the Insolvency and Public Trustee's Office, represented today, actually took steps to try and revise the bankruptcy framework. So now bankrupts actually do have specific milestones, specific financial targets to hit. Now, how do you become bankrupt? I think that's the first and foremost question that a lot of people have to ask. How can I make someone else bankrupt? The person has to have some connection with Singapore. Now, you either live in Singapore, you have worked in Singapore, you got property in Singapore, or you've carried on business in Singapore in the year before the bankruptcy application. We have received questions about if I incur a debt in another country, can I chase? Now, the problem is that you have to go to that country to commence proceedings. You can't do it in Singapore. Singapore is powerful, our passport is very powerful, but our courts must operate within the jurisdiction of Singapore, and that's where we operate. You have to owe, and this is an important number because there's some confusion. You have to owe at least $15,000 in debt. You are of course free to go and pursue someone for $14,000 or less, but to make someone bankrupt, the courts must be satisfied that that person owes at least $15,000. Anything less, and that person is not eligible for bankruptcy. And of course, as I said just now, if you don't reply to the statutory demand within 21 days, you are legally considered to be unable to pay. Right? You can make yourself bankrupt if you can show the courts that you owe $15,000 at least. Alternatively, someone can make you bankrupt, and this person must show that the person they're making bankrupt owes them at least $15,000. Again, usually credit card companies, financial institutions, anyone who you enter into a contract to, so on and so forth. There is, again, I think some confusion as to, so this question that we usually get is, I have to pay money to make myself bankrupt, and the answer, unfortunately, is yes, right? You do have to pay fees to a number of organizations. So the first is, before you even start the process, you need to have at least $1,850. This is a deposit that goes to the official assignee. It takes care of a variety of administration fees. I believe Mr. Teo will share more later on this, but it covers administration fees and a variety of fees that you incur as a bankrupt. And when you apply to court, the application is $60, and a supporting affidavit needs to go with the application. It's $1 a page. So practically you're looking at maybe about, I would say easily $200. So around $2,000 to start the process of bankruptcy. And again, most people say, but I don't even have money to pay for XYZ. Unfortunately, this is the cost of bankruptcy. To be practical, you don't need a lawyer to do this, but having a lawyer or actually going to the Supreme Court actually helps to give you some guidance as to what you need to fulfill to make sure that you can be made bankrupt. Okay, the last point is important because since 1st November 2023, the official assignee has by law mandated that in most cases, you have to choose a private trustee in bankruptcy to be your trustee in bankruptcy. The term is bandied about a lot, OA, BTIB. So right now, the OA does very few cases except public interest cases. And I informally understand that it's very difficult to be a public interest case. You would have to be involved in something quite major and drastic. And in most cases, as you can see, even for OK Lim, I believe a private trustee in bankruptcy was appointed to administer his bankruptcy. Okay, DRS, debt repayment scheme. A lot of media, a lot of blood has been spilled on this. Now, again, Mr. Kevin Pugh will talk more about it later, but I think the most important thing I want to highlight, it is not a get out of jail free card. It is not some cheat code to avoid bankruptcy, right? I know those beautiful people on TikTok will tell you, but it is not the case. A debt repayment scheme is basically a pre-bankruptcy scheme that avoids you from being adjudged a bankrupt by the courts, right? So you don't actually have the bankruptcy status applied to you, but it is more stringent than I think the debt management plans that CCS works together with financial institutions, right? And the most important thing that I want to highlight is that you cannot just apply for DRS. You have to actually make a bankruptcy application first. The court looks at your facts and figures, mostly whether your debt is less than $150,000. Then you are referred to the Ministry of Law, the official assignee's office, for consideration on whether you can be on the DRS. But if you don't get on the DRS, you become bankrupt. And so it is not an easy way to get out of bankruptcy. And in fact, if you fail to get into the DRS, or if you fail out of the DRS, you actually become a bankrupt person. So I think that's very important to highlight. Okay, so questions that we always get about bankruptcy, the FAQs that we get is, can I continue to drive a car? Recently I talked to the Straits Times, and one of the questions they had was, do I have to, if I have a dog, can I still bring them to the groomer? Or do I have to cut their hair myself, right? Someone else asked me, I just bought the newest iPhone. Do I have to return it and downgrade to that, right? Okay, so generally speaking, the law provides that your property and assets vest in the PTIB. The only major exceptions are if you own a HDB flat, this does not vest by law. If you have CPF monies, those are protected from creditors. If you've given away any property, sold, or anything, any kind of property, and I say property, I don't just mean houses, I also mean like cars, shares in private companies, you have to report it, right? you cannot do many things. So if you're a small business owner, actually this is quite impactful because you can no longer be a director. If you have certain licenses, you can no longer act. So for instance, you can no longer be a financial advisor. You can no longer sell insurance, right? And this one is the most important. You cannot leave Singapore without permission. Now, I was just discussing with Karen before, and while JB is very near, JB is technically another country, right? And so if you go to JB, you are considered to have left the country, you need permission, right? I don't know, do you remember this story? We had an elderly bankrupt gentleman who got many cases of unauthorized travel against him, which is a prosecutable offense. You actually can go to jail or have to pay a fine. And he had something like 50 occurrences. So we asked him what happened. And he said, oh, I walked to JB for my foot massages. So we said, we told you right during the briefing that you cannot leave the country. But because apparently the video had an airplane, he thought if you fly, that was what was prohibited. And so he said, in Chinese, 我走路嘛, I walked across the causeway. At which point one of my case officers asked, is it because you walk, that's why you need the foot massages? Anyway, but whatever it is, if you know anyone who is thinking about bankruptcy and you need to travel, you cannot travel without permission, right? You do actually need permission from the OA or the PTIB. You cannot sue people, right? So some people say, I want to sue this person. You can't do that. The flip side is you can't be sued either except with permission from the court. You cannot borrow more than $1,000 without disclosing the fact that you are bankrupt. So some people think that they want to borrow even when they are bankrupt to maintain their lifestyle. You can't do that. Okay, so then the question is, how does this fit in all with the iPhone, the groomers and all that? So in 2015, the Ministry of Law actually made substantial changes to the bankruptcy regime. We call this the Differentiated Discharge Framework, the DDF. So what happens now is that once a person is adjudged bankrupt, the debtor's ability to repay becomes part of the assessment, right? So this is why you need to go, if you know anyone who's bankrupt, please encourage them to meet their PTIB, because you need to know how much to pay, right? So that person, so the PTIB will work together with the debtor, and they'll determine how much they should pay per month. This is called a monthly contribution. So this looks at a number of factors, right? Your current income, whether your job is affected, just as I shared just now, if you used to sell financial plans, you can't do that. So how the bankruptcy affects your job, but also your university qualifications, if any, or educational qualifications, your expenses, your household, all this is taken into consideration. So once once the monthly contribution is set, then the PTIB will determine how much is your total contribution. And this represents your target sum that makes you eligible to be considered for discharge from bankruptcy, right? If you don't, okay, and I'll get through discharge, but if you don't meet your trustee and you think you can hide forever, this date does not start, right? The day you are eligible for discharge starts from the day that you are assessed by the trustee to have cooperated, and it's called an administration date, and then they add 3 years, 5 years, and 7 years. If you don't meet your trustee, this date does not start. You can stay on in bankruptcy, well, almost forever, right? Your date theoretically never starts, so your conduct in bankruptcy is never considered to have begun. Okay, so again, as part of the 2015 amendments, MinLaw now considers a bankrupt eligible. Sorry, this is for a first-time bankrupt, right? If you are a repeat bankrupt, you add 2 years to everything, so 5, 7, 9. So part of the 2015 amendments was introduced to help people understand bankruptcy as a financial rehabilitation tool, which is why the monthly contribution comes in, because it helps you to understand and pay a little back towards your creditors for the debts that you owe them, right? So how do you become eligible for discharge? At the 3-year mark, you have to pay your total contribution in full, right? So all 52 months, so you are accelerating the timeline. More importantly, half of your creditors must not object. So what happens is your PTIB will write to all your creditors, everyone you owe money to, and say, is it okay if we discharge this person at the 3-year mark? they will assess it and see whether or not you ought to stay longer. So, anecdotally, I think there's a 50-50 chance that your creditors may say no. And at which point, then you stay on for 2 more years. The average life cycle of a bankrupt who cooperates, who pays his monthly contribution for regularly, will be 5 years. At the 5-year mark, you'll be discharged from bankruptcy. Now, if you go into hiding, you show up for your first appointment but then never pay up again, it's actually 7 years. 7 years as a long stop. But more importantly, your name stays on the register forever. This register basically is viewable by all financial institutions, lending companies, so on and so forth. And there is a high likelihood that they are unlikely to extend credit because you did not make contributions during your bankruptcy, right? So there is this concern that you are unable to maintain your debts when you pay. So it either comes with no loan or a loan at a higher interest rate, right? Now, what are the other effects of discharge? Now, most of your debts are wiped out, right? So there are some people who are concerned that once you go into bankruptcy, does it mean that after I come out, I need to start paying back the banks? The idea of bankruptcy is that you are financially rehabilitated, you start afresh, right? Not that it's an easy way to avoid your debts, but to start afresh for people who really need help, right? And bankruptcy, I think under the 2050 amendments, MinLaw has tried to make it more of a help regime rather than a punitive regime. So again, if you pay your total contribution, your name does stay on the register just to alert people that you've gone through this rehabilitative procedure, but after 5 years, it is expunged, it is wiped out. But if you don't pay your total contribution, then your name stays on forever, right? So I think that's important. Now, I'm here representing Pro Bono SG. We are a registered charity with IPC status, and we are a wholly owned subsidiary of the Law Society of Singapore. Now, we are here to assist people and access to justice for everyone who is vulnerable or disadvantaged. We do it through legal awareness, like we're doing today. We assist to give legal advice, and we advocate as well. Now, we help a whole variety of people, right? It is not just people in debt. We help people who face legal issues, who may not otherwise have access to legal aid. So, the Legal Aid Bureau is a department under the Ministry of Law. Some people don't qualify for that, but we are here to fill the gap. If you know people who are vulnerable, especially non-citizens and migrant communities, this is a group of people that we find need representation for a variety of matters. We are here to plug the gap. Youth and young persons, sometimes, especially in this age of social media, sometimes they need help with certain issues, but they are not old enough to get lawyers or not wealthy enough. We are here to plug the gap as well. We also assist creatives, freelancers, self-employed persons, and generally we're looking out for underserved communities. But as long as you're a member, someone in Singapore who needs legal help, Pro Bono SG is here to help you. And just to let everyone know, we serve over 16,000 members of our community. We represented 1,300 of them in court. We dispense legal guidance to almost 4,000 of them. And through our various awareness talks, we empowered more than 10,000 people in Singapore. I think this is a helpful map. If you can look for a community touchpoint that is nearest to you. And we also work with CDCs to provide legal clinics and other network legal clinics as well, all across Singapore. So connect with us at PBSG, and now I think it's time for the panel. Thank you all very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Tris. After hearing from our three very interesting presentations, I'm sure we must have many questions. We will now proceed with our question and answer session. May I please invite the members of the panel to take their seats. Ms. Jill Tan, Mr. Koh Yu King, Ms. Tan Hui Min, and Mr. Tris Xavier. We are also very privileged to have with us Mr. Kelvin Teo, who is the Deputy Official Assignee and Public Trustee from the Insolvency and Public Trustee Office, and Ms. Karen Tan, Assistant Registrar, Supreme Court.
All right, thank you, Stanley. Well, so I think we've taken you through this financial journey in the last hour or so. as Yuki mentioned, so we started with cash flow management, how you save, the rule of 72, which honestly I hadn't heard about until I saw Yuki's slides, and to ask us to think about changing our mindset, right? Instead of buy now, pay later, it's save first, buy later. But of course, if we don't carry out all those good habits and we get into financial trouble, then we heard from Hui Min about prudent use of credit cards, how we should avoid those debts, and the impact that those debts can have, not just on our finances, but also on our family life, our work life. And she also mentioned the various support avenues that we have. And then Tris then ran through for us the legal part of falling into debt, right? When you get a letter of demand, a statutory demand, what's the difference between those two? And then if you then have the bankruptcy application made, you go to court, and what happens when you become bankrupt, and then how to get out of bankruptcy. So that was a very quick journey through that life cycle, excuse me, as it were, of being in debt. But as you would recall, we touched on a few things, the speakers touched on a few things, and we're going to expand on them. So Tris mentioned the debt repayment scheme, and that is something that is pre-bankruptcy and a way that you can try to avoid bankruptcy, but of course it still involves working hard to pay your debts. And I think one area we didn't quite touch on also is when you then have to appear in court pursuant to a bankruptcy application, what really happens then. And that's where our two other panelists for this morning come in, right? So first we have Kevin, who is the Deputy Official Assignee, and perhaps Kevin, I'll ask you to start with a short introduction of yourself, and perhaps fill in some of the details for us about the debt repayment scheme.
Thanks, Registrar. So I'm Kevin, Deputy Official Assignee. So my work in Insolvency Office, there are mainly two parts. So as was mentioned earlier, we oversee the debt repayment scheme. It's a scheme administered by the Official Assignee. Then the other half of the work we do in the Insolvency Office pertains to bankruptcy. The Official Assignee's work in regard to bankruptcy nowadays is more focused on the supervisory aspect. We administer and coordinate things like payments in and out of the bankruptcy estate account. We also maintain the system for bankrupt to apply for permission to travel. And we also investigate, let's say if there's a bankruptcy offense committed by the bankrupt, the case will be referred to the Official Assignee to investigate. So in a nutshell, this is what the Official Assignee does in regard to bankruptcies. So back to debt repayment scheme. The scheme, as mentioned by Tris earlier, helps debtors avoid bankruptcy by giving them an option to get into a scheme, help them repay the debts. A few things to highlight about the scheme. It is a debtor-driven scheme, which means that the debtor himself or herself must be motivated to get into the scheme, fulfill the obligations, the terms of the debt repayment plan, and stay in the scheme. Quite a lot of debtors, we come across a few debtors who have the sense of entitlement that they need to be placed on the scheme, and once they're on the scheme, they have a God-given right to remain in the scheme, and they should be allowed to stay in the scheme even though they don't fulfill the terms. So I'm glad that Tris also earlier mentioned that clarified this misconception, common misconception that you can apply for the DRS a lot of people come to us and say, how do I, I owe this amount, and how do I apply for the scheme? So I think it bears reminding that, to be considered for the DRS, you need to have begun bankruptcy proceedings must have begun, against you. And if you fail, whether in the assessment stage for the DRS or after commencement for DRS, there is every opportunity that bankruptcy proceedings can carry on, and then you can then be made a bankrupt. One of the things that I should highlight also is that, and I think Tracy did mention that there's a $150,000 cap, yes. So from time to time, we do have people coming to us and saying that we owe this much, and way in excess of $150,000. Or that they come to us and say that, I have a very pitiful I very unfortunately lost my job. I'm now without income. I owe this amount of money. Can I get onto the DRS? So the DRS is a debt-driven initiative, and you must have that monthly income. There must be some prospect of you servicing the monthly installment. So it's not a free path to dodge from your creditors. You must have the means to keep up the monthly installments. So that's another thing we thought we should clarify at this point. So that's maybe at this point what I'll say about DRS. Yeah.
I think there is a suitability assessment as well.
Yes.
For the DRS.
Yeah. So I think as mentioned earlier, what normally happens is that a bankruptcy application it's made against you either by a creditor or by yourself, and then if the courts find that you may be a candidate for DRS, then the case gets referred to the official assignee. That's when we will assess the candidates, the debtor's suitability. So there will be a few criteria, I think, as Chris mentioned in the slides. You cannot you cannot own a business. And the reason is that there's every risk that as a business owner you will rack up the debt. So that's the reason. The total debt cannot exceed $150,000. You must have income or a reasonable and stable means of servicing the monthly installments. So these are mainly the criteria we will look at when assessing candidates for the DRS.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, then I'll move to our next panelist. This is Ms. Karen Tan. She's an assistant registrar in the Supreme Court. And as the registrars, we actually are the ones who hear the bankruptcy applications when they come in. So perhaps, Karen, you could tell us something about what you see when debtors come to the court in their bankruptcy applications or bankruptcy matters, and the questions that they ask us quite often.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Registrar. Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Tan. I'm one of the assistant registrars in the Supreme Court of Singapore. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the opportunity and spending your morning here with us. We do hope that some of what we've shared in the presentations has been useful to you. I certainly have learned quite a lot about all the financial tools. Some of them are very interesting. One of the things I will go back and check is my subscriptions on the emails. Until he mentioned it, I didn't realize how many emails I was getting tempting me to buy, especially this time of the year, Chinese New Year, right? The number of notifications I'm getting about Chinese New Year goodies that have been coming in. As mentioned earlier, I'm the Assistant Registrar of the Supreme Court. One of the roles we do as Assistant Registrars is that we deal with cases that are filed in the Supreme Court in actions. We manage them. We also hear applications. We make decisions. We make orders. One of the applications that we deal with are bankruptcy applications. Bankruptcy applications are only filed in the Supreme Court of Singapore. And so after a debtor has gone through the various stages and they find that there is a bankruptcy application, they are made either by a creditor bringing the debtor to court for debt that's owed, or it's made by the debtor himself because the debtor wants to make himself a bankrupt. Now, very often when a debtor comes to court, especially if the debtor is brought to court by his creditor, the debtor is very anxious. He's worried, he's stressed, he's in court, it is a place which is unfamiliar, and of course the stress of having this debt of being brought to court by your creditor is extremely stressful, and the debtor is just very, very worried. I think one of the first questions he asks when the debtor comes to court, when he's brought by a creditor, is he asks whether he can make payment, whether he can make part payment, whether he can pay by installments, whether there's any way he can be given time to raise funds to pay for the debt. I think as Kevin mentioned earlier, there is the debt repayment scheme that's in place. So if the debtor does satisfy the requirements for the debt repayment scheme, and all the other conditions for making a bankruptcy order is actually in place, the court will actually adjourn the bankruptcy application. We will refer the debtor to the official assignee for the assessment as to whether or not the debtor is suitable for the debt repayment scheme. If the official assignee says that the debtor is suitable and has commenced his debt repayment scheme, the courts will be told, and then the bankruptcy application will be deemed withdrawn, which means it stops. And then the debtor will proceed on the debt repayment scheme. If the official assignee comes back and tells us that the debtor is not suitable for the debt repayment scheme, that means that the bankruptcy application will continue again. The courts will hear the case and the bankruptcy order may be made. I think sometimes some misconceptions in relation to the bankruptcy application, especially where a debtor himself makes the application to make himself bankrupt, is that the debtor thinks that a bankruptcy order is this magic pill, that the minute the bankruptcy order is made, the debts are all dealt with and done, and they disappear. Okay, just to share, I had one case where after that the bankruptcy order was made, the first question that the person asked me was, does that mean that the outlaw will stop calling me? Alright, it's not a magic pill. Alright, the debts are still there. They will have to be managed. They will be managed by the public trust, the PTIP once the person goes to the administration. And as you heard earlier, as shared by Chris, there are monthly installments, there are the monthly contributions that we pay. So that you have to still pay towards your debt. The other thing I think which many debtors, especially those who apply to make themselves bankrupt, are not aware of is that they think that they don't realize that bankruptcy actually comes with a lot of restrictions and disqualifications on their lives. I think it was shared earlier that they don't realize that they cannot travel without permission. I think I just share, I had one case where after the bankruptcy order was made, and I just informed the debtor that the PTIP will be in touch with the bankrupt to tell the bankrupt what were the next steps they were supposed to be made. One of the things I mentioned to the bankrupt is, do take note that you cannot travel without permission. And then the bankrupt, this debtor told me, oh, I live in JB. How do I go home tonight? And at which point in time I said, please go and contact the, at the time I think it was official assignee immediately to seek permission to travel. Alright, so these are some things that when a person makes himself bankrupt, they don't realize, they think that the bankruptcy order will just solve all their problems. I mean, there are restrictions. Travel is one of them. They cannot be a director. They cannot manage a business. So when the bankrupt comes to court, especially when it's what we call a debtor bankruptcy application, when the debtor applies to make himself a bankrupt, I generally pause. I speak to the bankrupt for a while. I ask him, has he explored options? Bankruptcy, in this case, I mean, we've shared today, there's so many other options. They can go to CCS, they can seek advice from pro bono. Have they considered the other options in relation to their debt? Have they considered the restrictions on the bank, on themselves? The restrictions, the disqualifications. And actually, in some cases, the debtor does pause. He looks at me and he said, oh, I didn't realize that being a bankrupt carried so many restrictions, so many disqualifications. And at that point of time, then the debtor said, can I have some time to go back and check? What are the consequences of being a bankrupt? Alright, so they then go back and check and then make a decision as to whether or not they really want to make themselves a bankrupt. So these are just some of the things we see in a bankruptcy application when they come to the courts.
Thank you very much, Karen. Alright, so as you can see on the screen, it's now our Q&A segment. You can just use the QR code, put in your questions. We already have quite a few questions that have come in, so thank you very much. So during the Q&A, I would just ask that you keep the dialogue respectful. Any questions here, of course, and the answers, we ask you to maintain confidentiality. We will have to say, though, this is not a forum for specific financial or legal advice, all right? So we can't give you the financial or legal advice. If you want to, you can speak to people in the booths outside to see where you can get further help, whether it's for financial or legal matters, all right? If you want to ask questions live and in person, you can raise your hand. We will hand you the mic to ask the questions, but if you're too shy, no worries, you can put it into the pigeonhole and we will get to your questions, all right? Now, as you might recall, when you registered for this event, we did ask if you had any questions, you could put them in first. And some of you actually did. So I think we will start with those questions, all right? And I'll have the panel members perhaps address some of these questions. So on the point of resources and support and guidance, so we had these few questions and I will read them out. What are the resources that a person who is heavily in debt can tap on? Is there debt support available for people who cannot work? And is that a good thing or something we should avoid at all costs? And when is risk acceptable? Right, so maybe, Yu-King, I'll ask you to start.
Thank you. Maybe I just comment on the financial education resources and then seeking exit help for that to the other panel members. So at the Money Sense Institute for Financial Literacy, we do have free public Zoom talks to educate the public about loans and credits, about debt, about housing affordability, about the credit card debt and all that kind of stuff. So there are educational resources that are available. And in terms of I think the last question of that segment about how to think about debt, one of the things we like to educate the public on is all debt is some form of risk. So need to be careful about how much debt you take on and are you able to manage the risk. So yeah, maybe I'll just pause there and allow the others to also.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier on, we conduct weekly information talk on debt management. So anyone who has some debt repayment issue, it can be you think you have a big one or you think you have a small one, it doesn't matter. Just attend our talk, it's free of charge. Okay, and all you need to do is to, if you miss the chance to do the QR code, we have a booth outside. Look for people wearing bright yellow t-shirt. Okay, register for the talk, it's free of charge. Like I say, we have sessions on a weekday evening, also sessions on Saturday afternoon. Saturday afternoon normally is on a webinar. Weekday evening is in person. The good thing about weekday evening is that because it's in person, I think there's more interaction. You can ask questions easily, all right, and it covers the options to resolve a debt problem, including seeking credit counseling with us. What you need to get ready to come for credit counseling so that you can really know what is the financial position is and know what options may be applicable to you, okay, or someone that you know about that has that issue. So attend our talk, okay, I think that is really a good place to start. And after attending the talk doesn't mean that the person has to come for credit counseling, no. Just attend the talk, learn something, decide what to do next, okay?
I also would say that by the time lawyers' letters are issued to a debtor, it is usually, to be blunt, a little bit too late. What I understand is that financial institutions, there's the relationship side, but then there is the asset, basically the debt chasing side, right? And once lawyers' letters come, it usually means that they've moved from the management of the relationship to chasing down the debts. So unfortunately, I think, of course, we see a lot of people come with lawyers' letters, and it is very difficult, I think, at that point to negotiate a payment. I think, as AR Karen was saying, people go to court and ask, can they pay? the unfortunate truth is usually by that point, the financial institutions are usually done talking. They've moved it over to recovery, right? So if your RM or someone from the bank is calling you, there's still some room for negotiation. CCS, I think, is a wonderful resource. They've helped a lot of people over the years. I will say, once a lawyer's letter comes out, usually by that point, the financial institution will only take full repayment or to just put you into bankruptcy. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, yes, I think before the problem becomes too big, address it before the legal action starts. Okay, I'm not saying that CCS can work out a repayment arrangement for everybody to come to seek help, but at least everyone who comes to seek assistance from CCS, you will at least get an assessment on your financial position, and we will help you to identify what may be a suitable approach. Okay, and then you decide what you want to do next. But for those of you who have a debt issue, or sorry, whoever has a debt issue, come forward and can work out a repayment plan, and you are prepared to abide by the guidelines, then of course we can assist to work out the repayment plan. And as I shared earlier on, there are cases that fully repay. We have assisted close to 30,000 individuals who worked out a repayment proposal to their creditors. About 40% of them have fully repaid. Okay, of course, some drop off. They couldn't continue for one reason or another, and we still have close to 12,000 of them making monthly installment payment.
Maybe I can jump in with one question here that we received from a member of the audience. What is the difference between CCS negotiating on behalf of the debtor versus the debtor negotiating with the bank itself? And does CCS have a higher success rate?
Okay, it depends. I am aware that, okay, not everybody is able to talk to the bank confidently and able to work out a plan. Okay, if you can, go ahead. The difference is that when an individual talks to his bank, normally okay, people come to seek help from us easily, about 5 creditors. So they have to talk one-to-one. It's not the bank's job to help the person to address the other creditors' debt, right? I mean, the bank will say, you owe me, you pay me, right? So whatever plan they give is from the bank addressing how much I owe to the bank. But I still have to pay the others one, right? So when the person do it individually, the end result may or may not work sometimes, because individual bank only think of how fast they want to get back the money. So the plan could vary. The amount, generally speaking, could be larger, generally speaking. The difference what CCS can do is because we do it holistically. We are the facilitator. We are not the creditors, so it's very different, right? So when the person comes, we will see, who he owes, how much he owes. And then when we work out a plan, it's basically prorated. Okay, so that all creditors can more or less be paid off at the same time. And we see it holistically. We are able to ascertain realistically how much he can pay, right? So whatever we suggest, put up, that's why I say not everybody can work out a DNP with us, okay, not everyone. But for those who can work out, meaning that there is sufficient budget surplus, okay? Income minus expenses is either a surplus or a deficit, generally speaking. So if there is a surplus, and the surplus is sufficient to repay all the banks or licensed money lender in such a way that they are prepared to accept. Yeah, we roughly know what they are prepared to accept. He would have enough money to take care of his living expenses before we put up a proposal. Okay? Yeah, so if we are able to put up a proposal, I wouldn't say it's 100% guaranteed accepted by the banks. But I am very pleased to share that a very good chance the banks will accept, because we follow a certain guideline, a framework that we have worked out with the banks, a framework we have worked out with the licensed money lender. So when we say we cannot put up, it's because you are not able to meet the framework that the banks or the licensed money lender expect to receive back the money, to receive back the payment. Okay, so that's what I can say. You know, that those who are successfully able to talk to their creditors directly and work out a payment arrangement, we will get to know them, generally speaking. But for those who come to us and we assess and say that potentially this is a DNP case, if you want us to put up, we will assist to put up. High chance the creditors, like the banks and licensed money lender, will accept. So now the ball is back to the person's court, right? If the banks or the licensed money lenders accept, so the person just need to honor what he has proposed to pay. In full, on time, every month. And he can see himself become that.
Thank you. So in this vein of making repayments, I think we've had a couple of questions now. If as the debtor, if I'm not working, I can't work, I'm in poor health, then how do I repay my debts? So what is the advice, or what's the suggestion for that? You came with, you're able to give us some suggestions?
Off the top of my mind, I think if a person doesn't have an income source, then obviously it's going to be a lot harder to do a debt repayment plan. I think from our perspective, what we always encourage people to be mindful of is to kind of keep a financial dashboard of all your finances summarized in one location, so that you know what financial assets you have, how much is a bank, how much is where else, how much is where else. A lot of people put money into all the different buckets, but never have an overview of their financial position, and including how much debt you have and how much outstanding amount on each line of debt. And then obviously the ability to, if there's ability to go back to work, that will be a big help. And then sometimes we've had cases. One case I met 2 years ago. This young lady, she's still working, but what happened was actually her family stepped in. She was $40,000 in debt, a 28-year-old, $40,000 in debt, 6 lines of credit. But for her, that situation was actually the family helped part of it. The family said, okay, for this small amount, we will pay off the debtor first, and then this young lady owe the family interest-free. So for some people, that could be an option if you have a good family or relative who is willing to help. And so we've already met more than one person who actually the family came in and stepped in to help. Still must pay back the family member, but that's more sympathetic debt. So those are some options, but I think without income source, it gets a bit harder.
All right, thank you. Now we've had some questions about the bankruptcy process, and in particular this $1,850 bankruptcy deposit. Right. So some of the pre-submitted questions were: is there any recourse for people who cannot afford the $1,850 deposit, or whether can this be put in sort of used towards paying off the creditors or waived? Kevin, could you take this question? Thank you.
I think, if I'm not wrong, in Trish's debt just now, there was mention of this $1,850. The money is not a fee that is charged by the official assignee. As reflected in the slides, it's actually a deposit that goes into the bankruptcy estate. And this money is used for the various expenses that may be incurred in the administration of bankruptcy. So it is not for the OA to waive. Only a small part of this amount, if I'm not wrong, it's $50, goes to the official assignee to recover the cost of the official assignee handling the case. What sometimes happens, what I understand is that if a debtor who's thinking of applying for bankruptcy, if he is unable, or if he's unable to pay this $1,850, an alternative would be to just wait for one of the creditors to initiate the bankruptcy proceedings, in which case it will be the creditor, initiating creditor who has to pay this 1,850. So that's one way to get around it.
Thank you, Kevin. Now we have some questions of what happens to the debt when I die? So if I'm a bankrupt and then I die, what happens to the debt? Or even if it's just credit card debts, are all the debts wiped out upon the debtor's death? Tris, maybe you can take this one.
I'm going to start with an anecdote. We had a gentleman when I was at the OA's office who was diagnosed with stage 3 or stage 4 cancer. At the time, pretty serious, no cure. So our friend decides that this is the time to live life like never before, buys 3 or 4 sports cars, unit at Reflections at Keppel Bay, which was new, a lot of new watches. What is strange is I actually knew the oncologist, and oncologists, it came out in the newspapers, that's why we could talk about it. Every time he went, he had a new watch. Then there's this cure that comes from America that solves this problem. One problem solved, another problem created. I think one misconception is that a lot of people think that when debts... Okay, so the misconception goes 2 ways. One is that when someone dies with debt, and not even bankrupt, we talked about before bankruptcy, so let's say not even bankrupt, but you owe money, the debt, when you die, the debts die with you, right? So that's one end of the scale. The other end of the scale is wives and children, spouses and children, being very worried that when a person passes away, they have to take over the debt. The truth is neither, right? Debts do not automatically disappear because the person passes away. In the estate then bears the risk, bears the loss. So what happens is that creditors can actually apply to court to take over as to have letters of administration, and then they administer the estate. They pay off their debts first, right? There's a bit of an interesting provision in the Insolvency Act where basically an estate can be declared insolvent. So what happens is that the person goes to court, declares the estate insolvent. What that means is then the creditors need to be paid first, right? The creditors need to be paid in the percentages that they are owed. So that actually can happen. But the flip side is that if the debt is personal to the person or to the company and the person passes away, it doesn't automatically pass to the relatives, because unless you enter into a joint personal guarantee or you guaranteed your father's or mother's debts, just because you're the family member does not entitle them to come after you. So if you pass away, or if the person passes away when bankrupt, or even becomes terminally ill, that person may be, I know it's cold comfort, but the person may be eligible for a discharge. So what happens is that the PTIB will consider and say, actually, there's no reasonable prospect for this person to continue working, they are bedridden, they are maybe in a coma, and they can never, and the prognosis is not good, right? So at that point, actually the PTIB can apply for a discharge, basically on the grounds that there is no reasonable room for recovery after that. Now it cannot just be, it's not just because you have a terminal illness that you can be discharged. It really has to be one that affects the ability of that person to earn and make any significant contributions to their estate. So I think that's a bit of a long answer to that question.
Thank you, Tris. Now we have quite a few questions on bankruptcy, so while I've tried to group these together, maybe we'll go back to some of the questions on spending, right? So just one quick question. I think Yu King, this is for you, about saving 20% of your income. Question is it gross income or income after CPF?
It's take home, it's income after CPF. So the general idea is that CPF is good, but CPF helps us with 3 major big ticket items in life: housing, retirement, and healthcare. Right. So all the CPF contribution can be used for these 3 big ticket items. But then, most people will recognize firstly that CPF alone is not going to pay for 100% of your housing. CPF alone is not going to take care of 100% of your retirement funds, and CPF alone is not going to take care of 100% of your medical bills. So just even looking at those three big ticket items, which CPF is going to help, it's not going to be enough for 100% of those three items. And what else, other things that you cannot use CPF money for. So the 20% savings every month as the recommended, and more as your salary increases if possible, is to think of it as you still need to save some if you're going to buy a house, for some emergency medical expenses, and you still need to save extra for retirement funds on top of CPF, as well as you need to save for all the other things that you want in life, whether it's to go for the next holiday, whether it's for... So the savings is really on top of CPF. Yeah, so that's why it's important.
Thank you. All right, and this is partly a comment and partly a question, I guess. I'll read it out. Credit card debts are increasing these days. So why is this the current trend for most Singaporeans, and how do we resolve this problem amongst the young, especially young families with heavy responsibilities and saddled with credit card debts?
Can I give a short something and then I'll pass on?
Sure.
She's the credit card expert, but in the 2024 OCBC Financial Wellness Index survey, they found that 41% of young adults and Gen Zs only pay the minimum sum on the credit card, which is scary. And in all our talks and workshops, before we start the education of credit cards, okay, how many of you have a credit card? A lot of hands go up. How many of you know what's the interest rate on the credit card? Usually only one or two people. So I think part of the problem is not knowing, not being educated about the dangers of the credit card or some of the parameters around the credit card, like what's the interest rate. And then the second thing I would say is, and I'm not sure whether we have statistics, that a lot of the I think the Financial Wellness Index has some statistics. A lot of the extra spending and going into debt, credit card debt, is for wants and luxury items, not for basic needs. So there's this, there's this thing, there's this reminder that we like to use in our workshops to say, remember that your financial decisions can either free you in the long term or bind you for a very long time. So just get the education up front, use the tool healthily, and don't get into the constraint situation. So that's my thought, that a lot of it's actually on wants and luxuries.
Earlier on in one of my slides, it says it asks whether credit card is a tool or a trap. It is a tool, all right? And just remember, it's a method for us to make payments securely, right? And conveniently. We are using more credit card. I think one thing is that we are becoming a cashless society, right? So because we encourage to pay with card, and that leads to some of us use our credit card more frequently, correct? Yeah. So one thing I remember there was a research that says if this item is $1,000, if you ask me to pay with cash, I may not want to buy. But pay with credit card can. Not because I don't have the $1,000, but it's the fact that I have to take out $1,000 in hard cash to pay for the item that make me think twice. So I would say that I think it's a psychological thing. Okay, so using credit card, we are probably more likely to purchase something that we actually got no plan to purchase, or pay for something that actually more than what we're prepared to pay for. Okay, so that helps so-called to loan the credit card outstanding. So the thing is that what is the other part of the question? Then I add on. Then the thing is that online, right? Online platform, that means I can spend any time of the day. So it make buying very easy. Okay, so of course, making it easy means high chance of buying more frequently. Okay.
Yes, the other part of the question was the current trend among Singaporeans and among the young, and those with young families.
Yeah. Then of course BNPL all this thing. It does help us Okay, I'm not so sure how it sounds right, but it does hit us to spending more. Young families, frankly speaking, whether young family, old families, all need to spend, right? As we get older, see doctor more frequent, buy more supplements. Young family, more enrichment classes, I don't know. Yeah. So the thing is that, again, I think we talk about drawing up a budget, all right, and set aside something to save first or to invest. Then leave with, okay, let's say I bring home net 1,000. Set aside either 2,000 or 3,000, 200 or 300 for the irregular expenses, for the savings, for the purchasing of insurance, for hopefully some investment. Then we have to learn to live with the $700. You know, okay, one thing, you talk about tracking, right? I do that. And I realize, I notice almost every month I overspend. But what comforted me was, I already set aside my savings up front. And I have buffer, so that when I overspend, it into my buffer. But whatever I want to save is already saved up front. So that means I am overspending according to my budget, but I'm not overspending according or overusing my credit facility. So something to think about. Because tracking takes a lot of effort, okay? Discipline. Every night before I sleep, I switch on my computer and I start keying in how much I spend for that day. I do that. And that's how I know that every month I overspend.
Thank you. Maybe now I'll go into a set of questions we received on the DRS, the debt repayment scheme. So one is, well, if I am assessed to be unsuitable for DRS, can I then just withdraw the bankruptcy application? The second one is, what is the formula used to calculate the amount payable under DRS? And third question is, what is the time frame for debts under DRS to be extinguished? Kevin, perhaps you could take these. Thank you.
So the first question, maybe I'll leave it to Kevin. What happens, whether you can just...
Sure.
Let me take the first one out. Okay, so as I shared earlier, if a debtor is assessed not to be suitable for the debt repayment scheme, then the official signee will tell us, and then the bankruptcy application will come back for hearing before the court. Whether it can be withdrawn or not, well, it depends. If it's the debtor himself who's putting in the bankruptcy application, it is his application. He wants to make himself bankrupt. If he then decides at that point of time he doesn't want to proceed with it, he can then tell us that he wants to stop and he wants to withdraw the bankruptcy application. So yes, he can do that. But if it's a creditor who has brought the debtor to court, right, then it is actually the creditor who is the one who says he wants to proceed. So even the debtor is not the one who says, I want to stop the bankruptcy application. So in a sense, it will depend on who has started the bankruptcy application.
So the second question is on what is the formula for formulating the debt repayment plan? There are various things which the official assignment looks at. One would be the income, the debtor's income, the debtor's expenses. The other thing we look at is the total debt that is owed by the debtor. So we do need to look after the interests of both the debtor and the creditor. We don't want debt repayment plan that is so onerous that the debtor has no reasonable prospect of sustaining. In such cases, we will probably find that this debtor is not suitable for the DRS, and we will refer the case back to the court. At the same time, we don't want to be so lax and have a monthly installment that is so low, quite easy for the debtor to keep up with. But at the end of the 57 months, yield an amount that is doesn't pay out a significant or meaningful proportion of the total debt. So, is there a formula? No, we do need to have this. We do need to balance the various considerations. Internally, we do. The managers will review the cases to ensure that there's some consistency in the way we formulate the debt repayment plans. But so what we do need the debtors to understand is that we are there to make sure that a plan, if entered into, has every chance of succeeding. So we do sometimes need the debtor to make adjustments to their spending. They may not be able to continue whatever expenses they were used to before entering the DRS. So these are just things they have to bear in mind. As to what the question is,
time frame with which by which the debts are extinguished.
So what happens is that a debt repayment plan often comprises 57 months of monthly installments. So if you dutifully pay out your monthly installments 57 times, and then and you meet that amount, and you pay out your annual fees, and what will happen is that we will process the case for completion. The official assignee will issue a certificate of completion, and then all the debts that were filed under the DRS will be extinguished. If you omit to disclose a certain debt owed to another creditor, that debt will not be covered under the DRS. But in the first place, you should be making a full disclosure of all your debts in order for the OA to make a complete assessment of your suitability. So debtors really shouldn't be omitting creditors in their disclosure.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, now we have some questions. I think we have people who are worried about their HDB flats, right? As in, well, does it go into the estate to satisfy a debt, or can it be willed, bypassing the creditors to the benefit of the beneficiaries without going into the repayment of creditors owed? Tris, maybe you want to take that, sort of the status of HDB flats in bankruptcy, and we also had a question on CPF assets, so status of both these types of property.
Sure. So again, I think I put it in my slide. If you own a HDB flat, it is automatically excluded from seizure by creditors. So if you own a HDB flat, you cannot form part of the estate. Okay, so CPF monies, I want to be quite careful, because if the CPF monies belong to you, your CPF monies do not become subject to distribution among the creditors. However, if someone leaves CPF monies to you, that is not protected, and that can be distributed, right? So basically someone passes that, nominates you as the CPF recipient, that money is unfortunately up for grabs. In terms of willing away, I just want to make this last point. You can only property that is subject to a trust. So if you hold property in trust for someone else, that is not considered your property, because under law, the true beneficial owner is someone else. If now all of you are rushing to think about trust, do note that if you buy a property under trust structure, you have to pay ABSD of 65%, and IRAS may or may not give it back to you, right? So IRAS makes the call. If you put assets in a will only takes effect when you pass away. It does not take effect. And again, as I said earlier, death is not just not the end of your debts. It's also it's also a very stupid way to deal with your debt issue, right? But in short, you cannot use a will to circumnavigate the effect of the bankruptcy regime.
Thank you, Tris. Now, we have a few questions, I think, arising, Karen, from the little anecdote you gave about the bankrupt who was living in JB. And what's going to happen then, right? So if the bankrupt is a foreigner, so to speak, or is not a resident of Singapore, what's going to happen? Is he going to be like the other case where that Tris mentioned with the foot massage? He commits 50 offences before we even know. So how do we deal with those sorts of scenarios? Yeah. Perhaps Karen and then Kevin, thank you.
Okay, so in that case, when the debtor told me that she lives in JB, I told her to immediately go and contact the trustee because under the bankruptcy regime, bankrupt can travel with permission of the bankruptcy trustee, the PTIP. So in that case, I told her to please quickly go down to the, at the time I think it was official signee's office and go obtain permission.
I'll speak from the perspective of the official assignee as an administrator of bankruptcy. I think nowadays, as Tris mentioned, the private trustees actually takes on all new bankruptcies. So, I mean, the OA takes no pleasure in denying bankrupts from traveling. The whole point of controlling the movement of bankrupts in and out of Singapore is just to make sure that first of all, they don't dissipate assets overseas or live or have a good life. They really should be putting money aside for the benefit of the bankruptcy estate. So when the bankrupt makes an application to travel, we will look at various things. Number one, who will pay for the travel? What is the purpose of the travel? If it's for a work purpose, then we will be more likely to agree. In this case, if the bankrupt lives in Malaysia, then clearly we can't deny him that opportunity. We can't be making him, keep him in Singapore. So we do look at various factors. Maybe Trace can give his perspective on how a private trustee would deal with such applications.
Sure, thanks. I also do want to add that since that incident of our gentleman going over to JP 50 times, actually now the official assignee's office and ICA do have a back-end arrangement such that if a person is made bankrupt, ICA is automatically updated. And I know this because I've received a few phone calls from people who conveniently forget to ask for permission and then they get stopped at the border. So, I mean, ICA is doing a fantastic job in that regard. I echo what Kevin says. It's not that we want to deny someone or punish them, but if someone is made bankrupt in Singapore, the part of their duty is to make repayment to their creditors. Now, so generally what I tell people who come under my administration as a bankruptcy is to give at least 2 to 3 weeks notice. So basically they should let me know via email and apply through the portal for permission to leave the country, and also give all the supporting documents that are asked for. 2 to 3 weeks because sometimes we as professionals, we get busy, we may need more documents. If the travel is truly urgent, what the PTIP can do is to generate a letter that they can give to the ICA officer stating that permission has been granted, has been considered and has been granted. What I usually do in such a situation is state that they're being allowed to travel from X date to X date on a one-off goodwill basis, but that basically for future travel, they should come back to the PTIB for permission.
Thank you. So I think that also deals with one of the questions that had come in about how long the OA or the PTIB might take to approve your request for travel, right? And well, I'm glad to hear that there is now this back-end arrangement with ICA, because previously I think there wasn't such an arrangement, so bankrupts could actually travel without permission and they wouldn't necessarily be stopped at our borders. And I think there was a question here which said the OA was complicit in that man's commission of offences. But the thing is, there is a toll, right, on that, in the sense when ICA's records updated with all the names of the bankrupts, it's more information that the system needs to trawl through before your gate opens, whether it's at the Woodlands checkpoint or in the airport, right? So all that adds to the time taken to process these things. So there was a time when I think ICA was a bit more reluctant to do this, but now there is that time, so it's harder for bankrupts to leave without permission. All right. So maybe I'll take a pause here and I'll ask the audience, sort of, anyone wants to ask a question live rather than over the pigeonhole? No?
This one of these.
Oh, yes. Just a minute. Bring the mic down to you.
From what I understand is that there used to be a minimum amount of debt and a minimum number of creditors involved before CCC is willing to take up that case. Is that correct?
Okay. Let me put it this way. In terms of info talk, it doesn't matter. Anyone with debt, no debt can come. In terms of credit counselling, also doesn't matter how much the person owe, how many creditors the person owe. But to work out a repayment plan through CCS under the, they want the person to talk to them directly. Yeah. That size doesn't matter. You know, I mean, can be a few thousand, can be a few tens of thousands. You know, the creditor will work with the person directly because they also want to collect back the money. So, but of course, to ask them to wait for a long time, a bit difficult. Normally, they want to collect back very fast, very soon, ideally yesterday. To have a 1 year, 2 year repayment installment is possible, they may give, depending on the amount. Because when they keep the account in the system, it's a lot of work. Need to monitor and everything. So they want to quickly settle the matter. But like I said, to come for counselling doesn't matter whether one creditor or more creditors. But to work out a plan, we have to take a look first because we do have a guideline to follow. I hope that answers your question.
Quinn, since you have the microphone, I have one question. What charges are payable to CCS for their services?
Okay, for the info talk, it's free of charge. For the counselling session, it's also free of charge. In the event, if the person is able to work out a repayment plan under CCS DMP, depending on, I can't remember, either the debt size or the monthly installment that you need to pay, we do charge. Starts from $50 to, I think, $250 at this juncture. Yeah. So, normally the money installment payment amount is definitely more than the $250. And it's one off. It's one off. Okay. If you pay late, there's no late fee, no interest.
Thank you. Now, we've had a few questions about scams and fraudulent credit card transactions, and I think that's quite topical. So the concerns are, you know, if there's a fraudulent credit card transaction and then the customer refuses to pay, and then the bank sends a letter of demand, then what happens? Or, you know, if I was the victim of a scam, can I be made bankrupt from that debt? So perhaps you can give me these.
Yeah, I think, yes, there's definitely a lot more scams on the rise, and just yesterday there was a news of experienced investor loses money to scams based on apps and all that. So I think firstly, the thing to be careful about is not just the spending on the credit card, but taking on loans and leverage to invest. Yeah, I think that's something to be mindful of in the first place. Because if it really turns out to be a scam and you lose the money, you're still left with the debt. You know, and so a lot of people like to think that, oh, but if I can borrow at a lower interest rate and invest, why not, right? Arbitrage. But it's not the same. It's not apples and apples comparison. When you take on debt, you have a financial obligation to repay. That thing is not going to go away. It's an obligation that will not disappear. and when you take then that money to put into investment, that is uncertain. You might not get the money back, you might get returns, you might not. So it's not wise to put those two on the same equation level because the risk profile is very, very different. So that's first. So secondly, I think from avoiding scams management perspective, there are a few tools now that the government has worked with the banks to put in place. Number one, the banks and government agencies will no longer send any SMSs or messages with clickable links. So that's one red flag. So that's if you receive a clickable link from a message with a clickable link, don't click on the link. Go try and find the official bank website or log into your portal or call your bank and ask the question. That's one. Secondly, the banks have also now this money lock feature for some of the bank accounts. And so what they have done is they give you ability to lock up certain portions of your funds. You choose the amount, and that locked up portion will then not be able to have digital transfers, online transfers. So that is another method to kind of maybe safeguard. The third method is to make sure you turn on all the notifications. Now the banks are very good. They give you all the notifications of every transaction. Last time it used to be only if you spend more than $100, for example, then you might get a notification. Now every single transaction on your credit card or on your pay now, you can get a notification. Make sure all that is turned on because most people don't check their credit card bills and transactions every day. That's not practical. And most people don't even check every month, which is not good. Must check every month. But turning on the notifications, immediately you get a notification, and then if you see something that it wasn't you, then immediately call the bank. And so we've had people who have that experience before. I didn't make this transaction, immediately call. On the CPF side, they have lowered the default allowable withdrawable sum if you are 55 and above. It used to be 20,000 per day, but because of scams, they have lowered it down to 2,000 per day by default. You can still raise the amount of online withdrawal that you can make manually, and then lower it. And then I think the last thing to think about for scams is really sometimes it's again lesser ways for your money to exit your wallet, right? But then sometimes now with these e-wallets, a lot of credit cards are linked to e-wallets, or some debit cards have e-wallets. So, and especially when traveling, a lot of people now know that these multi-currency cards are cheaper rates, but then the additional maybe comfort there is these multi-currency debit cards are linked to an e-wallet. So when your money is ring-fenced in the e-wallet, the maximum you lose is that amount in the e-wallet. So if you only have $400 in the e-wallet, 500, then that's the maximum exposure. So there are quite a few ways that we think about to try to either minimize the chances of being scammed or the chances of losses, big losses from scams. Yeah.
Thank you, Yuki. All right, we don't have much time left, so I'll just cover some very quick questions that we had, and these will be for Tris and Kevin. So if a debtor wants to self-file for bankruptcy, how much does he need to pay the PTIB?
Lawyers' two favorite words, it depends. Some PTIBs take an upfront deposit. Some PTIBs work on, I think, almost zero, but you will have to be honest. So MinLaw does have a list of PTIBs that you can go to. I believe there are contact details. Basically, it's also a way to ensure that you're not being scammed, because that was just discussed that these people actually do have the license, so their updated details are there. You are free to approach them to discuss, and of course, given the state that many debtors find themselves in, I think even any deposit can be negotiated.
So there was a question arising from the OK Lim comment that, so who gets to choose the private trustees, and is it the creditors who have to pay them? So for these big bankruptcies, yes, actually it is the creditor that chooses the PTIB, and the creditor will pay them. But the follow-up question is who regulates these folks, and who answers appeals or complaints if they are irresponsible or biased in their decisions? I think Kevin, you'll be able to answer this.
Yeah, so the Insolvency Office, there's this officer known as a licensing officer whose job is to basically regulate license insolvency practitioners, which Trace is one, issue licenses, regulate, investigate complaints, review, monitor compliance to statutory requirements. So there is a function within the Insolvency Office that regulates all these practitioners.
All right, and I guess it's fitting we'll close with some bankruptcy applications, so that bankruptcy questions. That's the end of this process. So, can a person who doesn't pay anything get discharged after 7 years? And if you did not pay your target contribution, then can the creditors check, or anyone check for that bankruptcy record that you did not pay in full?
So one of the functions of the Insolvency Office is to maintain a registry, a general registry. So if you do not meet your total contribution, you might get a discharge, but your bankruptcy record will remain searchable permanently. Yeah. If you do meet the total contribution, then it will remain in the registry for a certain number of years, and then you'll be unsearchable for that. So the question of if you were to, completely
pay nothing
and whether you get discharged, that will depend on the trustee. If the official assignee were to handle such a case, we would at the very least find out or inquire as to why they have not made any monthly contribution, because that amount would have been determined right at the start based on the earning ability of the income of the bankrupt, and also taking into consideration the expenses. So we would at the very least inquire why they didn't pay.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Now we have many more questions here, but unfortunately we've run out of time. So I'm afraid I can't go through all the questions. We've gone through as many as we can. As we mentioned earlier, we have booths outside, so if you still have questions and you'd like to speak to any of our panelists or speakers, you're welcome to stay. All right, but now to wrap up, perhaps I will ask each of our panelists here this morning just 1 minute, all right? Maybe I will start with, Hui Min. So what is the most common mistake that you see people making, which makes them fall into debt? And what is the easiest thing they can do to stay out of debt?
Common mistake, I always think that it's probably they treat the credit facility as their own income or their own savings. If they did not treat it, if they use it as a tool of payment and pay off at the end of the month, there won't be any debt. There won't be any outstanding. Yeah. Of course, when we counsel people, they do give us reasons why they are in debt. Sometimes they mention because of heavy family burden, because of job disruption. Of course, people acknowledge overspending. These are the 3 very common reasons cited. Among the 3, overspending definitely is something that is within our control, right? Okay, not so easy to control, but it can manage one. Heavy family burden, some of the cases I would still think that is still something that we can manage, unless it's very unfortunate situation of, okay, can I just share a case? One case. The family got 4 kids. Out of the 4 kids, 3 kids got medical condition, and serious medical condition. Both parents are highly educated and can draw a good income, but because of the children's medical condition, the mom left a job to take care of the child, and the father's income although good, but difficult because it's serious medical condition. So the type of situation is rare, right? So that's why I said most of the time it should be able to manage. Okay, job. Job, some things is beyond our control, right? I mean, if the company closed down or want to cut commission or whatever, But one thing, don't choose to leave a job without a job. That is within our control, unless the job environment is so bad that, so there are things that is within control, there are things that may be a bit more difficult to control, but that said, if we make the habit of savings up and having some emergency fund, it should more or less still able to tide us over.
Thank you. So Yuki, maybe I'll ask you next, just to tell us by way of closing. So if you're already in debt, then what is the type of debt that you should clear first?
Difficult question. I think there are two perspectives. Number one is, regardless of the two options, always make all the payments to all your lines of debt, the monthly payments on time to keep it from snowballing further, but then try and get the excess cash. And there's two methods, depending which I think you're more motivated. The first method, which is usually what I mentioned in this slide as well, is target the highest interest cost one first, because that is the most costly or the fastest building if you don't repay. So that's one method. You list all the debts by the interest charge. Ensure you're still making the monthly payments, but target the one to wipe off first is the highest interest charge. But for some people, the highest interest charge is the biggest item, so there's another school of thought that says, while you make your monthly repayments to all, but the one that has the smallest outstanding amount, you try and get rid of that guy first because it's more motivating. So that your Excel that has got 4 lines of debt, then you get rid of the smallest outstanding amount first. Now you've got 3 lines of debt, and they call this the snowball method, so that your excess savings can then, together with the monthly charge that now don't have to go to the one you got rid of, you have a larger amount to attack the next largest outstanding amount. So the two methods, I think, depends on which one you prefer or which one you are more likely to adhere to. I think that's important.
Thank you. Right. Tris, I'll ask you next. So when someone comes to you for assistance to apply for bankruptcy, what is the most common misunderstanding that debtors have when they think they want to become bankrupt?
So, two major schools of misconceptions. The first is that bankruptcy is the be-all, end-all. They don't see it as a financial rehabilitation tool. Those are the ones I need to make sure that they understand that this is a process, and actually cooperating with the trustee, be it myself or someone else, actually is a good way to start the process towards financial rehabilitation and hopefully freedom again. The others are those who treat it as the easy way out, and I think those people need to be disabused of that notion. Bankruptcy is a serious thing. It may be a way to deal with debts, but it comes at a cost, right? And I think it's good that people understand that cost to being in bankruptcy.
Thank you. So Karen, so for debtors who come before the court, as you mentioned, they make a lot of requests, but what is perhaps the most common requests that debtors make, which the court actually has no power to grant?
Okay, I think I mentioned at the start when I first started, one of the very common questions, they ask whether they can pay their time, whether they can pay by installment. I think as Tris has mentioned, by the time the matter has come to court already, the bank has handed it over already to its collections team. The court cannot force the creditor to accept an installment plan. All right, the debt is due and owing, it is due 100% to the creditor. They cannot expect, the court cannot make an order that the creditor accepts an installment plan. The other thing is that there are certain requirements for the debt repayment scheme. If the debtor doesn't fulfill those requirements, the court cannot refer it for the debt repayment scheme as well. So there's certain very fixed requirements. The court cannot do that. And I think in general, once the matter has been considered by the official assignee and has come back to the court telling us that the case has been considered by official assignee, the official assignee says not suitable, the courts will not refer it back to the official assignee again for reconsideration of debt repayment scheme.
Thank you, Karen. So finally, Kevin, so for bankrupts who have already come into the system, and they are paying their monthly or total contributions. So what is the most common misunderstanding that they have in their dealings with either the official assignee or with their private trustees in bankruptcy?
Actually, a common misunderstanding actually relates to bankrupts who don't pay their TC, and when 7 years is up, they expect to be given automatic discharge. As I mentioned earlier, there are various things we look at. Number one, why haven't you paid your total contribution? Are you, for example, guilty of concealing assets from the trustee? Have you committed a lot of offences and in the official assignee's attempts to investigate offences not cooperated with the investigation officer? So these are things we look at. Unfortunately, we do have bankrupts who feel that they are automatically entitled to be discharged. So it's just an opportunity. I think we should remind all bankrupts that they need to fulfill all their obligations as a bankrupt in order to gain a discharge at the end of 7 years. So it's something that just bears reminding.
Okay. All right. So I think that's all we have time for. I'm sorry we overran by a bit, but I'd like to thank all our panelists for this valuable discussion. As I mentioned, we've got booths outside, so if you'd like to speak to any of them or ask them any further questions, please feel free to do that. So perhaps please join me in thanking our
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings the question and answer segment to a close. Please join me in thanking the panelists. Mr. Koh Yu Kim, Ms. Tan Hui Min, Mrs. Chris Xavier, Ms. Jane Tan, Ms. Karen Tan, and Mr. Calvin Yu. Ladies and gentlemen, we are constantly looking for ways to improve and do better. We need your feedback in order to do this. Please scan the QR code on the screen to provide your feedback on this event. Thank you.